What's up? I got a perspective on my son that tried to commit suicide at 8, and then he had a lot of other anger issues. And I'm not going to say, well, he hasn't lately at all talked about death. He'll get dark really fast, but he hasn't gotten dark like that. I feel like we've gotten through a lot. Depends on how I present myself and my energies too, and how I react and act. But looking back, like even whenever I first was pregnant with him, my second son, his dad was abusive, and I was running from his dad a lot and hiding, and I was really stressed out. And I know that's a factor of it because that's where he was in my womb, the energy that was around, just like now. Like, why one time, then not every single aspect and every moment of our life, I think, for anything really. But then at 3.5 months old, he had pyloric stenosis. I kept taking him to the doctor 4 different times, and they kept telling me he was all right, and there's a lot more to that. But he ended up, we went to OU Children, thank you Lord for them, and the person when we checked in found out he had pyloric stenosis, which the stomach muscle was pinched shut, so he couldn't get anything down. He was like throwing up like the exorcist, and he was 8 pounds 9 ounces, and by this time he was like 7'9", like he wouldn't even move. I would hold him, and it's like, if I would have waited another day, he would have died. And I took him 4 times to the other doctor, but they treated me like a young, dumb mom. I was 21. I mean, he was my second son. My first one, I was 20 or 19, 20, whatever. My numbers. But, so we were in there for a week, and we had to get him rehydrated, so he has surgery. And then he's always been a hyper little baby, too. Like, even when he was little, he didn't sleep a lot. He'd be, like, laying in his crib, like, straight up, just staring, like, freakishly. But, like, just, like, observing what he's been through, too. But, and then at 3.5 years old, I dated somebody for a year, and after, like, a 1.5 or year or whatever, he abused him. Like, my son was really protective of me, but real high-strung, and it takes, a balanced person or somebody that understands, kids or just people to handle my son, like, then, at that age. And I was still going through my stuff, too. And I never did drugs when I was pregnant with him, so, because I'm straight up about all the things that happened up until he tried to commit suicide at 8 when he got diagnosed with diabetes, type 1. But if I look at it, and his dad wasn't around, whatever, there's environment and all sorts of stuff in me, and, I was, still trying to find myself, and being a parent, nothing comes to the rule book, and we all make mistakes, and I think that's a good lesson, like, for us to teach our kids that, because humility, I practice humility like the air I breathe, because I have no secrets, and I'll admit if I feel like I'm wrong. To each their own, but, if my intention isn't pure, I'll admit that. Like, now I know that, but, going off the subject here, sort of, but at 8, when he got diagnosed with diabetes, he's already faced death, and he might not know that consciously, but he did, and he's been abused, and that was locked in there. We had to do a lot of therapy for that, and I made sure that guy went to jail. I took my son to the police station, even though he's 3.5, like, just so he knew, hey, this isn't right. And it is, and then I had energy about how I felt because I couldn't believe it happened. Like, what the hell? Like, and then he tries to commit suicide whenever he's 8 because he got diagnosed with that. And I'm thinking of all the shit he's gone through and, like, how fucking strong. And I look up to him and his strength. Like, my kids have saved my life, and how could I feel bad about anything? Like, look what he's gone through. Like, this from my perspective as a mom too. He's faced death so many times, and for him to get up and want to live, because he's loving himself now. That's one thing we're working on, but his worth, like, he always felt different, and then energetically as a childhood, like, I believe whatever deep down happens, like, it needs to be talked about, or you need to find out, or, like, at least forgive. Like, and I know some situations you can't, parents or people aren't there, guardians or whoever, but him being suicidal, like, look, And it's not because he had a lot of bad things, but he took that path of free will, because I believe free will is like certain paths of hurt, pain, anger. And he didn't want to live like at 8. And he's 14 now, and we've kind of got over that hump just this last year. And he almost died on me twice last year too. He DKA'd on me. There's just so much. And yeah, like, he inspires me. And he's not suicidal anymore. And, you know, I got him off all the meds, and when he was diagnosed and put in the hospital, and I realized placing him, and I even talked to the doctors, like, I'm not going to label him forever, and I'm not going to always tell him he has a diagnosis when all that stuff happened. And everything is learned, and you really have to go deep down. And I believe anyone can heal themselves if they go that deep, because I believe we're challenged. Like, that's a challenge that our soul accepts in this life. And certain ones are like that, you know, no one's less or no one's greater than, but to really go deep, like, to childhood and see where it happened, because my son is like an example for me. And I'm so thankful I found myself, and I, you know, got rid of all my demons and my illusions so I can be a better mom and be inspired, like, by my son who's diabetic. And, you know, we can't control that right now. I believe there's a cure or something's going to happen, but he's living life or death every day. And I'm upset about this and that. Like, the material world, it just doesn't seem right. Like, it's like telling someone you wiped your ass wrong. Like, we should know that we're all special. We are all special. And we all have our own struggles. We all have our own path. Like, it's not that having things in life, you know, doesn't make us shine and sparkle to best day, but to know that we really need to just have ourselves and self-love. Because that's the only reason we place judgments and worth, like, on ourselves. And we want to, like, kill ourselves. Like, my son felt different. He got made fun of for being diabetic. Then he got abused. Like, his soul is just like bam, 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 getting hit with why me, why me. And I see where it comes from. And, like, he's better. And you can really look deep and practice humility. You can find that shit out. Like, I mean, I'm not saying we don't have, you know, journeys still, because life is a journey, but just think about it. Like, the things that we're upset about and that trigger us into getting a diagnosis are usually about self-worth or lack thereof. Like, something makes us feel important that we learned as a kid by observing our environment. Like, we're not meant to have these diagnoses. Like, we're meant to work through and look at ourselves deep. And that's it. My perspective.